Okay, so I guess we'll take them one at a time. For position number 4, Mr. Britling, Doug Britling, who is currently seated on the HDC. We can just do a voice vote, I guess.
Do you have a nomination from the table? Or vote to accept?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I think because of Mr. Purnell's rationalization on not knowing the 2 members, even if they have been serving for several years, probably would not be suitable to try to bring these people up to a vote. It may tend to fail. And both these members, I think, are qualified and good members, and I'd hate to see them fail just because somebody wants to vote because they don't know them.
Okay, we'll wait the 2 weeks then. Cemetery, Mr. Fugate, you going to do the same thing with him? Hello? Well, I need to know.
Well, I would vote, if there's not a problem with him, then
Is
I
Mr.
would
Fugate
vote
not
in.
known to anyone at the table?
I mean, let's just wait and hold them off,
2 weeks.
make it consistent.
Okay. We don't have a Yellow Bag Committee. Ms. Balance is out. Deer Hunt Committee, we have a meeting Thursday, the 26th at 2 p.m. in my office, so it's so slated. Public comment, we have the board.
Question.
Yes, sir.
We have an application for CAPC. Is this?
Well, I'll give that to Mr. Ragsdale, so
Okay.
hold on to that one. Since they'll make the decision, nomination. Okay, public comments. Anybody else? Okay. Mr. D. Perky-Powell will be first on the list for public comments.
All right.
D.
Hi, Mayor,
Perky-Powell.
Council.
How are you, sir? Coming up to who you are, D, for the tape.
I'm D. Perky-Powell, live on North Main, 229 North Main, here in Eureka Springs. I'd like to encourage the council to vote positively to renew and extend this contract with the auditorium. I think, as Rags so eloquently displayed, there is little cost to the city. There is a great cost to the city if we don't continue with what we currently have going right now, which is 145, 150 nights booked. And it takes a half a year or a year to book those nights. So if we don't continue with this, we're going to lose those bookings and that revenue, that tax revenue coming into the city. And it's my understanding that the maximum cost to the city has been approximately $25,000 for utilities. We have to understand that utilities are still going to be needed, whether that building is open or not. Now, it may be 50% of that, it may be 20% of that, but still there will be a cost. So I would greatly encourage you to look deep into your hearts and let's try to move forward positively for the city and continue with the auditorium and continue with the contract that's already in place with the CAPC. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perky-Powell. All right, next on the list is Joe Gunnels. Joe Gunnels, step up to the microphone.
Well, hello again. Thank you for giving me another opportunity to speak. I want to actually start with an apology for having to discuss this tonight. If I had been here at the last meeting, these discussions could have been had at that time, and I just couldn't be here, so I missed it, and I apologize for taking your time to rehash this again. But I've sent emails to, I think, as far as I know, each council member. I know to the mayor. I know he got a copy, and some replied back. So it's those talking points that I wanted to make. is really the three main points that Mr. Varner, with his approval of his franchise, and according to the way I have read the application, read the ordinance, the 3 points that I made to each of you, 4.20.06, I believe B, H, it's H, excuse me just a minute. Apologize, let me put this in for a second.
The stove is on. Okay. Just thought I'd let you know.
Okay. So again, to address this, and what I guess really to state very clearly my purpose of being here and sending the emails and asking for this time is to ask the council to, and I'm sorry I don't know the proper terminology or whatever, but I'm asking council to either revoke, rescind, recall, whatever, or to do a revote on what was voted on based on this information. And that is, again, looking at 4.20.06. B, it says applicant's local business office address, telephone number, email address, and business website address. Now, I understand that that's not defined real specifically, and I realize that this council may not really even know why that's in there. It wasn't in a former one, but it was put in there because of problems with when we had 4 tour franchises. And I apologize for taking the time, but I don't know who read the email and whether whether that was considered or not. But that was put into place because 2 of the 4 franchises that was here previously, Greater Eureka Springs Tours, which was owned by Jerry Ballinger, and K Tours, that was owned by K.K. Kendrick and Linda, they both of those companies, the owners of them and operators of them lived outside of Eureka Springs. They had other business interests in other towns, and in fact, at one time, even in different states. And it became problematic that the transit director, Lamont, at that time, became really quite frustrated with that. So 2 years ago, when the franchises were reduced from 2 to 1, from 4 to 2 franchises, that was part of the reason for doing that. Economics was really probably the main reason. Secondarily, you had 2 companies, which was me and Eureka Tours, which was Robert Clark. The 2 of us companies was bringing all the tour, almost all, I don't know its exact percentage, but well over, I would say, 90% of the group tour business to the franchise or to the transit department. And yet the money was being split on the individual ticket sales 4 different ways when 2 companies wasn't putting anything into the system. So that's part of the reason it was dropped to 2, and the fact that there was basically kind of absentee, ownership, if you will, or lack of local representation. So this B part was added in there to have an applicant's local business office address and telephone number. Again, I don't know how loose this is being interpreted, but, and I'm sorry, I did not get a copy of Mr. Varner's application, and I apologize because I did ask Ann if what the address was. Is it correct that it was Washburn, Missouri? So, I just asked an attorney friend this past week to kind of look at this with me and help me, ask for some.
Let me interrupt you just a moment.
Some interpretation.
Now, you've got 3 minutes on public comment. You are on the agenda to speak under new business number 1. Do you want to come back, or do you want to let him finish now?
Come back.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm
come
sorry.
back.
I didn't know that.
That's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I told you I'd put you on the
Well,
agenda.
at least
so.
we're very clear on what I wanted to do.
Yeah,
So,
okay. All right, come back
I'm sorry.
when we
Thank
call
you.
you. Thank you, sir. Mr. Charles Ragsdale, do you want to readdress Mr. Ragsdale, wherever you are?
With the mayor's consent, I'd like to yield my time to Mr. Bishop.
To Mr. Bishop. Okay.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Mike Bishop, and I'm here tonight to speak to you wearing two different hats. First of all, as a business operator here in town, and also as president of our Chamber of Commerce. And I was asked early in midsummer or so, I guess, to serve on a committee, the Auditorium Committee, and attended several meetings, and we addressed a lot of issues and went through a lot of process in trying to offer you some suggestions and a direction for our auditorium. I will tell you, going into those initial meetings, because I represented the Chamber and a lot of businesses, we represent well over 450 businesses in our community, there were a lot of mixed feelings about the auditorium and how it should be handled and how it should proceed. One of those big discussions, of course, was in years past. There was a lot of money spent, CAPC dollars, that people felt that should have been spent more in the line of advertising versus putting on special events and what have you. I think what has happened over the last couple of years, and especially over the last year or so, and under the current direction of our CAPC, that is no longer an issue. We've come up with formulas and ways where people rent the auditorium or use the auditorium, and the CAPC fills that job of simply promoting those events and activities. With that in mind, looking at the year that we're coming on here in 2012, I think it's going to be a challenging year. I think I'm optimistic about it, but I think we need everything that we have going for us in this city, and I think it would be in the best interest of the city and of our members and of our business community here for you all to extend the contract with the CAPC and at the same time get serious about a commission and taking the suggestions that we gave you through the committee to advance the auditorium and figure out exactly how we should operate it in the future. But I do think it's in the best interest right now for you all to give it the consideration and go ahead and extend that contract, give the folks an opportunity to continue the events that we have, because I know, being an entertainer myself and being on that end of it, I know the challenge of meeting contract dates and deadlines, and I can see the questions out there for people making commitments to this at this time of the year is not a healthy thing, and we are going to start losing ground that we don't need to lose in 2012. So I ask you to please give that every consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Is Mr. Ragsdale out there? Is he already left?
Yeah, he's still here.
Right. No, that was Mr. Dillfield. Okay.
Thank you.
You signed up. You got 3 minutes.
I appreciate it. Once again, just want to thank you all for letting us help manage the auditorium last year. We feel that we turned it around completely to the point that it is now a viable venue. People are eager to book it, but unfortunately right now it's in a state of limbo that only you can take it out of. We need your help to keep the auditorium going, and if you have a better alternative, I'd love to discuss it with you as you come up with the agenda item. So I'd ask you for your indulgence to possibly stay in the room and discuss, answer any questions, both on behalf of the committee that I served on and any questions you have as to the CAPC. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Blankenship? Beverly Blankenship.
I just wanted to give you my opinion about the Auditorium Commission. I wanted to tell you that under Mayor Satori was when the Auditorium Commission was removed, and it was because the city didn't want to pay and put money into that commission, and the CAPC was willing to take it. So for a decade, the CAPC has ran the auditorium. They spend about $100,000 a year on the personnel to run that, and the tickets and make all those things. Then a few years ago, when we had a different director at the CAPC, there weren't hardly any things going on in the auditorium. So that $100,000 that they were paying, there was no money coming in to offset it. So the CAPC decided, let's give it back to the city because it's just costing us money. So that is when they started saying, in a year we're going to give it back to the city because we're not making any money. It's costing us too much. Then they got a new CAPC director, And he did get things booked in there, and he did see the possibility to use it. The people in our town want to use it. They want more things to do. So that's where we're at. Usually this table tries to give it to the CAPC, and the CAPC tries to give it to this table. But now you have the CAPC saying, we will willingly run it for you. I hope that you will let them do that, because they've shown in good faith by booking these things in there that they are doing a good job of that finally. So I hope that y'all will, take that in consideration and move forward for the good of our town. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And Mr. Tom Tharp.
Hi guys, Tom Tharp, Olden Days Carriage. I wasn't going to say anything about the CAPC because I've had trials and tribulations with the CAPC in the past, just as most of you have over the last 30 years or so who have been here that long. You know the ups and downs of the CAPC. This is the first time in my memory that they finally seem to be on track, doing a good job, running the auditorium even well better than it's been done in a long time. Don't yank the rug out from under them right now. Give them a chance to get their foot in the door and get things done right. This is the first time it's happened. Let them work at it. If they fail, then yank the rug out from under them. But give them a chance to try it. You all have some 2 different items on the agenda for carriage franchise that's coming up. They're in 2 different places. I'd suggest if you want to put those 2 together, it'd probably be a good idea. The person that it directly affects is not here. I think that speaks volumes. Bear that in mind. And if you guys have any questions when you get to that point in the agenda, please feel free to ask. I do have an inside knowledge on the workings of that whole thing. Thank you.
All right, that's all the public comments. Unless there's somebody out there that didn't sign up. Speak now, forever hold your peace. All right, move on to unfinished business. First on the agenda is the dog ordinance update. Mr. Pownell, Mr. Weaver.
Move to discuss item 1, dog control ordinance.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Floor is open for discussion. Mr. Pownell.
Make a motion to assign a number and read the proposed ordinance to amend Chapter 6.04.
Do you only have a copy of it?
Well, I don't seem to have a copy of.
I don't either.
I need an extra.
When did we get copies?
Well, I've had it for a couple, 3 weeks.
Quite a while back. Oh, well, it may be in here somewhere.
This was faxed to us on January the 9th.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Pownell.
Due to the length of time that it's been on the table and with lack of adequate time to read it for the other council at the table, I propose to postpone this until the next meeting.
There's a second? Second. Being seconded, all in favor to postpone?
Aye.
To the next meeting, sir? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
That was sent to us the 9th of January,
That's the date on the fax. From
That's the date I
faxed or emailed.
fax to us here.
It was faxed to the clerk and to the mayor's office on that date. I'm not sure when it was distributed to your box.
Okay.
Okay. Number 2,
I apologize.
non-conforming off-premise sign is postponed for code. I assume it's going to still stay postponed. The hospital audit lease agreement, all of the questions that Mr. Pownell asked have been handed out. We've not received any comments back, so.
move that be carried over to the next meeting, please.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Okay, number 4 is now the Auditorium Commission ordinance review, along with the addition of the discussion of number 10, the new agreement.
I move that we discuss item 10 first.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Discussion's open. Mr. Pownell?
Well, I only have one thing to say. I think we got some very harsh words over the last hour for something that we had nothing to do with, and I'd just like to go on record that the council did not get a copy of this agreement until prior to this meeting, a reasonable time prior to this meeting. And I don't think there's any worth to the criticism that we can't continue if we can come up with a reasonable agreement and at the same time be working, hopefully we can multitask a little bit, go ahead and get an agreement in place and then decide whether or not the Auditorium Commission is the answer. But I really don't like the insinuations that the public may have interpreted the comments that we've been sitting here not wanting to agree with an agreement between the CAPC and the city because we haven't even discussed it until tonight.
Mr. DeVito?
If we reach an agreement on this contract, we have a year to figure out how to deal with the auditorium. This agreement has been in place. There has been some tweaking as by the CAPC in extending the contract. So it's basically the contract that we've been functioning under. So there's not been any major changes to it. We can discuss and vote on this contract tonight. It's not very lengthy. It's just barely a page long. So if there's any concerns that council have, they should express them at this point in time. It's maybe the city attorney could expand on any changes or issues in the contract and how it relates to the city from the CAPC.
Mr. Pownell?
I have two questions, and it's under the responsibilities of the city. Number one is 3C. Accept responsibility for and hold that the CAPC harmless for any state or federally mandated shortages in the facility. Could somebody in plain English explain that, please?
Mr. Ragsdale? It's you or the wheel. Got it?
A good question, Ken. I guess the answer would be that since you actually own the building, maintain the building, and control any repairs or anything that we would do with the building, that we feel that as the owner of the building that you would then, of course, be responsible for anything that we would be required to do to continue operating the building on your behalf.
I'd like to ask the city attorney if they could be putting any clearer language than the way it's on there right now, because that's just the way Mr. Ragsdale said it makes sense, but leaving it the way it is on here doesn't. And while he's still at the microphone, if I could ask on D, you stated that you have in your budget maintenance of the alarm system and fire extinguisher system. Is that correct? Someone pointed out the amount of money that was being allotted by the CAPC to take care of expenses.
Yeah. The under the city of?
Responsibility of the city maintain the safety systems mandated for the facility. That would be, for safety systems, not necessarily the payment that we're making on behalf of the, for the operation of the phone lines and the safety or the alarm system itself. We're not actually have never paid for the alarm systems themselves. Once again, that would be a building attachment, and therefore would be the responsibility of the building owner under any other commercial leases usually.
I thought that was brought up though in the discussion of the CAPC budget for the auditorium, that
we pay for the phone.
Some odd $1,000.
It's $3,112 for the phone and fire alarm lines, the lines that allow the fire alarms to transmit any signals to their central office.
Mr. Vina?
So my interpretation is you wouldn't be responsible for sprinkler systems and things like that.
Correct. Or the actual alarm hardware itself, because that's attachment to the building, and that would, under any commercial lease, would normally be the responsibility of the building owner.
So the only thing we're going to see from the CAPC is $1,008 for the year.
Actually, we're still absorbing $94,735 worth of operation costs for all of the other things that it takes to run an auditorium on behalf of the city.
That doesn't answer my question.
You have all these things booked, you said around 150?
I'm sorry, sir?
About 150 bookings?
I believe the last count that I was told was 145 plus, but I believe the year prior to us was in the 25 to 35 event range.
Our problem was under 3, item E, pay utility bills for the facility. It's going to at least double, if not more. All the events you have planned, our utility bills are going to at least double. Right now, I think we paid, what, $26,000 last year? Something like that.
Give or take.
We do everything we can to keep the cost of the building down. We're also looking forward to the possibility of, I think that it's now come down to they're going to be able to repair the HVAC unit. We're hopefully going to be able to install the higher efficiency windows to bring the utility costs better in line for the building. We are not staffing a full-time office there, therefore the costs to maintain a working environment, heat or cooling level for the building will be reduced dramatically as well.
But do you agree our utility bills at least double?
I don't believe that would be the case. There's a minimum level that the building has to be kept at all times, whether we're operating it or not. We have to keep it from freezing. We have to keep it from going too hot, because then we have the humidity and mold problems. So the auditorium is kept at a moderate temperature at all times and only brought up to a more comfortable level only for the show times themselves. So it's very minimal that we actually turn the thermostats up or down, so to speak.
Mr. Vina?
Just a little history of the CAPC's role in that, and Beverly Blankenship touched briefly on that. In the past, hundreds of thousands of dollars were going into the city auditorium to book shows. Bill Cosby's cost was $100,000. Ray Charles's cost was around $100,000. When you run a business and you divert your advertising money into other avenues, you diminish the return to the city. The CAPC is our advertising arm for the city. Every dollar they have the ability to advertise the city with puts revenues in the city coffers, of which we disperse. So what has precipitated the turnaround in the CAPC is we're not pouring our taxpayers' dollars into putting on shows and oftentimes losing tens of thousands of dollars on those shows. These dollars are going to advertise the city, and it's proving results because we had the best October on record. November was up 25,000 over last year. These are monies going into the city coffers. Every dollar we take out of the CAPC's budget is one less dollar they have to advertise the city with. So it's a lose-lose situation for the city as we divert our advertising dollars into things like paying the utility bills. The success of the CAPC and the profits generated from booking all these shows can go in to offset the costs of operating the auditorium. We might actually come out with a zero-sum game on the auditorium. But we are in the good situation we are with the CAPC because we finally got the revenue stream into advertising. So just be aware that they work for the city, and the money that the A&P generates through advertising and effective advertising goes into our city coffers. The shows they put on bring people to town to spend money on gifts and lodging and meals, and those put revenue into 25 shows last year wasn't putting any revenue in city coffers. 150 shows will put a considerable amount of revenue into the city coffers, provide money to the auditorium to offset the operation costs. So we're on the right track. We need to keep this momentum going, and that's our responsibility, is to keep that momentum going.
Another thing that we have done, the CAPC did vote that any profits above our operating cost for the auditorium would, of course, go back into the operating fund for the auditorium. So if there are profits generated as we go through it above and beyond our $94,000 investment, then any funds above that that are generated through the use of the auditorium will be turned over to the city for the helping pay for any bills towards the operation of the auditorium. We're not in it to make money. We're in it to save the auditorium, keep it open to where it can be the heart of our city and all of our city events. We'd just like to kind of go through maybe and explain to everyone what we would be losing, not just all of the festivals and events, but we would lose things like Springtime in the Ozarks, the Eureka Springs High School Spring Concert, the graduation and its rehearsal. We would lose the Eureka Awards. We would lose Home for the Holidays, the high school and middle school band and chorus concerts, the drama productions that we put them in, and of course a number of other events that go into the auditorium throughout the year. So it is something that we feel that we're also contributing to the city overall as part of our outreach to improve and enhance the tourist experience here, which we can do by law. We feel that by keeping the auditorium open, that we're providing a much-needed service that is crucial for us to bring in the tourist count that we are enjoying now. So it's to me, I believe that in the long run, we actually will generate through taxes by bringing people in far and above in revenue what you're going to expend towards supporting the facility and towards the operation of the facility too. It's a partnership is what we feel, is that the city and the CAPC and hopefully Auditorium Commission or whatever you form over the next year to operate the auditorium, that we can then work in hand in promoting the events better. We will be able to do our job of concentrating on the advertising and promotion of the city, while a group that's dedicated to the operation of the auditorium can make sure that your dollars are spent very, very wisely in the operation of the auditorium and still making it available to both local groups and to national and regional promoters for bringing shows to Eureka Springs that are crucial to the businesses that fund the CAPC. So we feel that there's a symbiotic relationship. It's worked very well over the past year. I did have to work very hard to get the commission to agree to a year as basically a stopgap to give you time to explore all options for operation of the auditorium and then move forward. To answer your question, Ken, that is exactly what this agreement is to do, is to give you that time to develop your plan of what you want to do with the auditorium from this point forward, trying to give you a full year's worth of time to do so.
Mr. Pennell?
I only have a problem with two paragraphs in this whole agreement, and that is under the CAP responsibilities on L and the city's responsibility on E. If we had bookings of 25 bookings in the past average and whatever the utilities were, and we're going to have 145 bookings, and I understand my colleague's point in the taking dollars away from the CAPC budget, but at the same time, A, B, and D are costs that we're inherently responsible for anyway, and probably most to C. If we were paying $1,000 under the last agreement with 25 bookings for the...
Excuse me. The $1,000 is not for the booking utilities. The $1,000 was only for reimbursing the city for the utility use of the very small office.
Finish my point.
Yes, sir.
We agreed up until this agreement expired, that $1,000 would go towards utilities. Granted, there was an office in the audit at that time. I still feel that it'd be like me opening my house with 2 people living there and paying utilities for a year for 2 people, and then all of a sudden having 75 people there all the time and considering my utility bills for electric, gas, and water. If we could reach some agreement, you stated earlier that any excess you'd be willing to come back to the city and help reimburse for utilities. If we could agree to that in this L and E, I don't have a problem with it.
Well, we've already voted to reimburse the city above any cost, so although I'm
But it's
not
not in
certain,
here.
we'll be glad to add that as an addendum. Yes, sir?
I have no disagreement with that, but I want to see it in the contract, how much you're going to pay for utilities. I want the dollar figure in the contract.
At this point, it would be any excess profits that we generate above our cost of operating the building on your behalf.
I would say that would be acceptable if you use the baseline of what the utility bill has been in the past, and then looking at what the utility bills are at the end of the time, without necessarily having a figure. But like he said, we need to have something in there that says that any excess will go back to reimbursing the city for utilities.
That we've already voted on, so I am authorized to add that. I can pencil that in to the agreement that the mayor could sign.
Any further? Ms. Balance?
I'd actually like to see the CAPC foot the entire utility bill. Essentially what's happening here is the CAPC wants the city to allow them to control the auditorium for $84 a month. So that's like, $84 a month rent. That building is worth a lot more than $84 a month. And for the $84 a month, they also want us to pay the utilities. Well, the utilities are probably going to be more than $84 a month. So that the taxpayers get to foot the bill for this building to be used, and it just seems a little excessive on the people when if you have, say, roughly going on 150 venues, performances happening, that's roughly 10 to 15 performances a month. So if I understand correctly, the money that is generated from this goes to the CAPC coffers?
To reimburse our $94,000 in addition to that, $93,000 in addition to that $1,000 that we're reimbursing the city. Once again, not for the utilities of the use of the building, but only the very small special events office. We were using that for management of the auditorium, and the CAPC has, for the past year, been paying that equivalent of $1,000 per year towards the utilities, but not for the operation of the building. That has always been the city's during this entire term that I'm aware of. What we've proposed is to continue that $1,000 using the special events office only while the auditorium is open, because we've actually moved that person to the CAPC offices. So we will not even be utilizing the utilities that we paid for in the past, except for on the days that the building is actually open and in operation. That's the only time that would be used. It's more than the $1,000. We've, like I said, that $94,000 includes the $1,000, so there's $94,000 that this agreement is actually encumbering us to do, because we've already dedicated that amount of budget. Those costs will roll over to the city, I guess, if the CAPC doesn't continue operating the auditorium. So instead of just the utility bills, you would have the utility bills plus all of the costs of the operation of the auditorium to start absorbing, which would be, at this point, we estimate right at $95,000 that we're paying towards the operation of the auditorium as well. So it could become, instead of just the $25,000 to $40,000 that the utilities could be. I'm not aware of exactly what the amount is on the utility bills, but it would be that plus the $90,000 plus that the city would be bearing in its entirety if the CAPC wasn't picking up that, really truly the lion's share of the operation cost of the auditorium.
Well, all I'm saying is that as an average taxpayer, I'd really like to see this contract be a little more in favor of the average taxpayer. CAPC has its own revenue flow. That's all I'm saying.
Our state law, really restricts us to things that are tourist oriented rather than resident oriented. That's where the rest of the sales tax revenue that our events and bringing people to Eureka Springs, the sales tax revenue that's generated through that, then goes towards truly back into the city coffers to help reimburse for the cost of the operation of the auditorium as well.
Mr. Vito.
I just want to reiterate that, if the auditorium goes dark, we still have to pay the utilities. You still have to maintain an average temperature in the auditorium, regardless of whether it's going to be used or not. We have an opportunity here with 150 nights booked into the auditorium. If conservatively they sold half the house, that's between 75 and 100,000 people that will be brought to town, who will be getting hotel rooms, meals, gifts. That's where our revenue comes from to the city coffers, and that's where the taxpayers benefit by how this arrangement with the CAPC is bearing fruit. For the first time in the 25 years I've been here, this is the first time we have a viable auditorium with a great venue for the year. And we can't let it go right now. We're too close to success on this, and we've gone zigzag for too many years, and it's finally working.
And once again, we do benefit the residents by keeping the building available for resident-oriented activities as well. All of the events that we put into the auditorium are open to the general public. Yes, there can be admission fees, but they are all open to the general public, so both our residents and our visitors can avail themselves of every opportunity when we open up the auditorium. So it's not like we're saying only tourists can benefit from our operation of the auditorium. We believe that tourists and residents will all benefit from our operation of the auditorium. Another thing that I just have to bring up is it's just a perfect example of why time is of the essence. We've had 4 dates canceled. We can't put it off until February 14th, because if so, then other events will have to be canceled, and because we simply have contracts that are in process that have to be worked through, and then we have to have the forward promotion of the events that are going on, and we're in limbo at this point. So any further delay from tonight basically does put us at an extreme disadvantage and potentially breach of contract. And it also prevents things like this. I was very blessed to get to go to Woodsong's Old Time Radio Hour. It's a free to all public radio and community radio stations show that is dedicated to folk music and celebrates almost every form of music. Michael Jonathan is coming here on March 29th to take a look at the facility to see if he would like to bring Woodsong's Old Time Radio Hour to Eureka Springs for a taping. They have 1.1 million radio listeners in the U.S. and 9 million viewers and listeners worldwide through the Armed Forces Radio Network, public broadcasting, television stations, and this is what we're trying to do with the auditorium, is to bring in world-class events, world-class entertainment to the auditorium, and we have this grand opportunity that now is in limbo because we need to be able to continue operating it, or we need to hand it over to the city. So those are some of the realities that we're facing.
Mr. Berry, you had your hand up first.
Well, I think Mr. Ragsdale kind of hit the point that I was going to make, was that even though there are 150 bookings, they're not all paid bookings. A lot of them are the public bookings, public nonprofit, the schools, the graduation, the various local concerts that really are not generating a large sum of money into it. It's those are for a lot for the citizens and for the local community. So, this is where we're trying to reach, I think, cooperation and working together. And this is, as was mentioned earlier, it's an exciting time to be able to see the auditorium being able to have things going on as much as it is. And so, this is something that I hope that the commission will look at, or the council, and we've already talked about certain things that Mr. Pinal was concerned about, and Mr. Ragsdale would be agreeable to. So I hope we can go ahead and pass this and proceed on, because I think it also points out to the next issue is why it's important to go ahead and start the commission and get a commission going to be able to take up a lot of these points.
Mr. Pinal.
Two questions. Why were the 4 bookings canceled?
They were February bookings, and without a firm commitment, he could not spend money to promote a show that he may not have the ability to produce.
I make a motion that the city attorney and Mr. Ragsdale put the verbiage that Mr. Ragsdale said he has the authority to give and updating paragraph E under 3. I appreciate the explanation on L. I'm happy with that. So,
thank you very much.
Second motion.
Motion and second. Any further discussion?
Can you do it again?
Ms. Balance, you had your hand up first. Oh, sorry.
It occurs to me that if the CABC is kind of under the gun because they need to get something done because it hasn't been done, seems to me they'd be a little more willing to negotiate. But
well, I was communicating with
Thanks.
Mr. Ragsdale back in November, saying I was disappointed that there wasn't some kind of agreement or something going on, and suddenly, like so many things happen here, suddenly it's at the table and now it's an emergency and everybody's going to die if we don't pass this,
Mr. DeMita.
Should have been worked that long ago.
Truly.
The APC has extended the contract 6 months. I feel that's a significant contribution from the CAPC.
Last meeting I heard from Butch that they had no desire whatsoever to manage the auditorium.
Yep, it's changed. They do now.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
It has changed. We have a year contract that we can sign.
Ms. Balance.
generally speaking, compromise means two factions coming towards the middle. It seems to me like whenever we compromise around here, it's one side going to the other side. So that's sort of a bizarre world to me. But I was hoping maybe we could get the CAPC to go ahead and agree to pay for the utility bills for the facility. I would be, if we could get that accomplished, and also what Mr. Parnell got them to agree to, I wouldn't have any problem with this. Even though I sure wish we would have taken the time and the effort to explore our options, because there may well have been much more superlative options that we're not even aware of, because we put all our eggs in one basket again.
Doc, you had your hand up? Did you?
How long would it take the city attorney and Mr. Ragsdale to change paragraph E based on what Mr. Ragsdale said?
Well, actually, Mr. Ragsdale has come up with some language. I have a suggestion for him. We can have something for you if you give us 5 minutes.
Move to adjourn for 5 minutes.
We're not going to adjourn. We're going to take a recess. Yes. Let's take a recess. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.